Unrivaled officially kicks off tonight, but before you tune in, let's talk about and preview WNBA Free Agency as the negotiation period kicks off officially on Tuesday, January 21st. The Ringer's Seerat Sohi is here. The Locked On Women's Basketball Podcast. It starts right now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are Locked On to Women's Basketball. I'm Jackie Powell, and happy Friday. I'm one of your hosts on this program. I cover the New York Liberty at the Next, and I've covered women's basketball and its culture nationally at many other places. Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by everyone at the Next, a place where we cover women's basketball all the time, and we tell the stories that need to be told every day. Subscribe now to support the staff at the Next that works oh so hard to bring you this coverage that matters a lot. It's $9 a month or $72 per year. Find us at thenexthoops.com and subscribe. And also remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. Today, our show is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. Last time we were together, dear listener, I had Megan Hall of For the Win on the program, and we gave report cards for all the new WNBA head coaches that were hired in the offseason, along with talking about how important hiring diverse candidates is, while also setting them up for success as well. But today, Seerat and I are going to dive into our expectations for WNBA free agency. So here's how we're going to do this. I've split up all of the WNBA teams between Seerat and me, although there is one that I'm calling the wild card team because I find it so difficult to have expectations for this team in particular. We will be getting to what that team is later. And also, now that the WNBA has 13 teams, that's an odd number, we don't necessarily have an even split. So we both have been assigned 6 teams, and then we'll share our thoughts about the wild card later in the show. So in segment 1, we're going to be breaking down Atlanta, Connecticut, Chicago, Dallas, and new expansion team Golden State. Segment 2 will be all about the Indiana Fever, the LA Sparks, and the Las Vegas Aces. And then we will wrap up with the Minnesota Lynx, defending champion New York Liberty, Phoenix Mercury, Seattle Storm, and the Washington Mystics. Not telling you all who the wild card is. You're just going to have to stay on for the ride. Okay, so I'm going to get us started, and hopefully we'll go quickly so you all can listen to our guest's voice. But I am up first with the Atlanta Dream. And so what I expect for the Dream is I expect them to be dark horses. Sure, their arena is too small, but they have been very successful in getting talent to come, especially away from franchises that have less amenities. Look at Jordan Canada and Alicia Gray, who came from both LA and Dallas, 2 organizations that are sort of a work in progress when it comes to professional amenities. Carl Smesko, their new head coach, I think will be a selling point. And I think the Dream are in the running, for Satou Sabally. I don't think they're front runners, but I think they're in the running. I think they could be front runners for Natasha Howard or Maisha Hines-Allen. And if they strike out, maybe they get a versatile big via a trade. I think Steph Dolson would work out very well in Atlanta.
I love what you're saying about the dream. I think Smesko is going to be awesome. And I particularly love the Steph Dolson pick, especially because of everything that he wants to do when it comes to just, pacing out, right? Like that pace and space style. I think Natisha Heidemann is somebody who could be really good there as well. And you're right. I mean, I just think Atlanta is one of those cities that regardless of the amenities, players want to play there. It's a good spot.
Absolutely. Like, I feel like they are a team that people are just not really talking about. So we'll see. Okay, Connecticut, which I also have. So if you all are regular listeners on this podcast, you know that I made a bold prediction in December that I believe the Suns' big three of Alyssa Thomas, Tawana Bonner, and Brianna Jones are all out of Connecticut. And after listening to yesterday's introductory presser for new head coach Rashid Mezion, it doesn't seem very clear that he's built relationships with these players that are unrestricted free agents. So I continue to believe in my bold prediction that the Sun will be at a crossroads as a franchise that sometimes can be a little stubborn to read the tea leaves when it might be time for a reset.
In particular, I think I would love to see them run it back.
Ooh.
And maybe just try to bring Emma Miesemann, who has a relationship with their new coach, and see if that actually pushes them over the edge. Because if I'm the Connecticut Sun, I just don't see a lot of upside into just letting a whole bunch of unrestricted free agents walk right now. At the very least, I'm going to core Alyssa Thomas and see what I can get for her, see if she's potentially a package deal with Tawana Bonner. But if I'm the Sun, I might just look at it and say, hey, new coach, potentially bringing in a new style. We have our first full season with Marina Mabrey on the team. And I don't know, we pushed the Minnesota Lynx to 5 games. And an ethical 5, I might add. I might think of myself as the second best team in the WNBA if I'm the Connecticut Sun, if I'm considering some of the way that the finals went down as well. Like, I don't know. I just think they're right there. And I think it's kind of like their one last shot.
I respect that. Although the narrative has been repeated so many times.
I know. I get the other side of it too, but.
All right. Mm-hmm. So you have the Chicago Sky, my friend.
Yes. Yes. So first of all, I'll say I am pretty confounded with the Chicago Sky not giving Kennedy Carter a qualifying offer. I just don't get it. Even if you don't want to bring her back, you can at least extend her a qualifying offer and see if you can trade her in the free agency market, right? I just don't really get it. If it's a locker room thing. Dana Evans, who you did decide to extend a qualifying offer to, was complaining about playing time either in the media or through her agent all season long. As a right, feels like she deserved more playing time. She feels like she deserved more playing time. So I just don't see a lot of consistency with extending her a qualifying offer and not giving one to Kennedy Carter, who at her best is like a top 10 player in the league, like a top 5 isolation creator in the league. So, but I just don't really get it. I will say though, I mean, when it comes to offseason needs, Chicago, very obviously, it's shooters, right? I do think that they're not necessarily going to be in the Satou Sabally sweepstake, and I think that most of their shooting needs, you want to probably look to the draft. I think the worst that they're going to do is Sonia Citron at that number 3 pick, and then maybe see if you can get like a Haley Van Lith in the bottom end of that draft as well. So, because I do have a first rounder at the end of the draft as well. So I think that overall, despite not loving the Kennedy Carter decision, I feel pretty good about Chicago's future, and I think that they are going to be really well positioned after going into the 2026 season.
Is back to me with the Dallas Wings, who are just a fascinating organization with their new front office with Curt Miller and Chris Koklanis as the new head coach. So those two, in Curt Miller and Chris Koklanis, have worked with a lot of the same players over the years. And a lot of those players come from both Connecticut and LA. So I expect Miller and Koklanis to convince at least one of the Suns' free agents to come to Dallas. I expect for Dallas to be in at least one trade with the LA Sparks. I'm thinking maybe Dallas trades the number 1 pick if Paige Beckers has made it clear that she does not want to come to Dallas, to the Sparks in exchange for their number 2 pick, and they throw in Lexi Brown. Brown already wrote on social media how sad she was that all of the former Sparks assistant coaches were going to Dallas.
Interesting. I did not see her post on social media about that. That would be interesting. I think if I'm Dallas and Paige Beckers and her team have basically strong-armed me into trading this number 1 pick, I'm just gonna want. It's an interesting thing because I think I would want a little bit more than Lexi Brown back for it, and I think looking at the Sparks end of it, Lexi Brown is probably has like that shooting ability that I actually really need if I'm the Sparks. So in a strange way, I feel like she's so valuable to them and might not be as valuable to the Wings. But I mean, just in general, I think if I'm giving up the number 1 pick, I'm going to make it hurt.
So you've got Golden State now, the new expansion franchise.
Yeah, I mean, Golden State is in such a fascinating position. I feel like they're a team that could end up just defining free agency, running the table and getting a bunch of players, or they could actually just end up somewhat empty-handed because it really just depends on how much faith players want to put in this new organization, which, hey, does have a lot of resources, from the practice facility to Joe Lacob basically saying he's going to be willing to spend for a contender. Natalie Nakasi is just poised to be a great first-year head coach. If I'm them, I am just saying, hey, Kelsey Plum is like my number 1 target right now, right? You have the relationship with Natalie. They are both dogs. They're both competitive. She fits a profile of exactly the type of player that you would want to set your brand new culture with, and it gives her this brand new opportunity to expand her game. And then if you can get her into the fold, then you can go to another free agent and say, hey, we got Kelsey Plum here. This is essentially a 1-year experiment. You're not signing for more than 1 year, given the new CBA coming up. Why don't you come and see if this is a place that you feel like you could build a long-term home? And if it's not, the stakes are not very high, and you can just move on after that. And, that's where like a Nneka Ogwumike potentially comes in, returning to her Stanford roots potentially.
I mean, you could potentially have both the president and first vice president of the WNBPA.
Exactly.
Yes.
Build them an office. Build them an office to do their negotiations from.
I mean, I think it's all very possible. But anyway, coming up, we are going to get into the Indiana Fever, the LA Sparks, and the Las Vegas Aces when it comes to what we expect from them in free agency. But first, I do want to talk to you all about our good friends at Robinhood. So, with Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8% or 8 times the national savings average. The perks of high net worth are now available for any worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. And you must keep funds in the IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Thank you very much, Robinhood. We appreciate you. And now we are back here in our second segment to give our expectations for the Indiana Fever to begin. So it's all on you, my friend. What's going on with Indiana? What do we think is happening?
Well, I think, just trying to make that full court press to try to get Satou Sabally, right? Like that is the number one target in free agency. They just announced a new $78 million state-of-the-art practice facility that just looks like it is going to be filled to the brim and setting a new standard for the WNBA. You have to love that just for the growth of the league overall. But you heard Aaliyah Boston say, hey, free agents, look over here. And I think that they can make a great sales pitch. I think it'll kind of come down to how much they potentially have to give up. Satou has already been cored by the Dallas Wings. They are working together to make a trade, as she reported herself on Unrivaled, which is just a really cool wrinkle to all of this. But if it can be like a Nalissa Smith and the 8th pick in the draft for her, with potentially a Grace Berger, or you probably don't want to give Lexi Hall up, and I think that might be kind of depending on the Fever's thinking and how much confidence they have in Satou signing long term, might be that sort of breaking point. I think it probably would be for me, just given that it's only 1 year, and you could probably just try to sign her as a free agent in 2026 anyways, if you wanted to. So that's a big one, right? And then going from there, you just kind of have to see, like, if you can't get her, there's Bree Jones could be an interesting target for them. I think, I'd knock on NECA's door for sure. You need a 4. And I think you can make the same sort of sales pitch to her and actually go more of like in a defensive direction as well. So I think that they have some interesting options, but it does kind of start and end with their negotiations with Dallas.
Yeah, from what I know and what I have reported previously, I think it's going to be hard to pitch her on Indiana or the city of Indianapolis. That's what
I can see that.
No, Satou.
Oh, because of her Berlin, like her past. Go ahead, actually.
No, I mean, she has indicated that she wants to be in a big city. And so, sure, Dallas is a big city, but the Wings weren't really downtown, So, I mean, Indianapolis is a fine city, but there are some really big ones that she would more like to be in.
Yeah.
So we will have to see.
Like the biggest one, perhaps.
Now you've got LA next.
Yeah, speaking of one of those cities, right? And one of those teams that I think is trying to set itself up, kind of like the Chicago Sky are, to be an eventual destination. They do obviously have a ton of cap space this year, and I think maybe we're having a different conversation about them if they got the number 1 pick. But considering they have the number 2 pick, I think that this is a year where they just continue to try to rebuild their team. And they have a new coach in Lynn Roberts, who I think is going to be really interesting. I'm really excited to see her pace and space system, much like Smesko, with the Sparks, right? So I think it's like, if you draft, let's say they draft Olivia Miles, that feels like the most likely move, especially, given Lynn coming in and the type of style that they want to play, having that point guard that can be a pick and roll practitioner and then also just push the ball up the floor is going to be important to them. Then I think you want to bring back Ari McDonald as well. Also, there's that Pac-12 connection. I'm curious if Lynn kind of is able to tap into a different side of Ari, potentially. She's obviously somebody who has seen all sides of her at a different point, probably a player that she spent some time thinking about at the very least, right? So I would be curious about that. And then from there, I think, you kind of I think you want to add some vets just to add some stability. You have plenty of young talent on this team. I think I would really like if the Indiana Fever don't bring her back, and Erica Wheeler. I think she was such a good vet for them. She's also somebody who can shoot the ball and who can move it up and down the court as well. So she fits into the system. And you also just know that, in a media market like LA, she's going to be somebody that potentially the young players could go to if anything is like getting too much for them. I think if not, maybe like Natisha Heidemann could work really well.
All right. The Las Vegas Aces. So I expect the Las Vegas Aces, who are without an actual GM, to lose Kelsey Plum in a sign and trade with the Golden State Valkyries. In that trade, they will earn Golden State's 5th overall pick, which Vegas will then trade again to bring another star to Vegas. The Aces haven't had a reputation to scout well in the draft, and they also don't seem to value their younger talent. It still blows my mind why Kate Martin was ever unprotected. So could Las Vegas acquire Jewell Loyd in exchange for the 5th overall pick? That's something I don't rule out, especially when Jewell Loyd is the same representation as Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, and Jackie Young.
Ooh, spicy.
Very spicy, I know. But I'm just using patterns here because they don't seem to value the draft.
No, they don't. They don't. I'm with you. I have nothing to add.
So we have to take another quick break, but in our final segment, we are going from the Minnesota Lynx all the way through the Washington Mystics. And yes, we still have our wild card team.
Locked on Women's Basketball is brought to you by Skims for Men. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've so often been called the Kardashian of women's basketball. So getting the opportunity to try Skims, knowing about their quality from friends and family, it lives up to the hype. I tried the boxer brief. It works really well with an active lifestyle, whether I'm working out or I'm just doing something socially. Skims boxer brief really works, stays in place all day. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Go to Skims Men's section over at skims.com/LockedOnNBA or check out that section in the Skims store. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Again, skims.com now with Skims underwear for men.
And now I'd like to talk to you all about FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, that's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this NFL playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you, FanDuel. And we are back. We are talking about these last bunch of teams. All right. The Minnesota Lynx.
Minnesota Lynx. Okay, let's do it. They are very interesting to me. They're almost like a Ferrari because you really have to, if everything is functioning so well, that you really have to think about how adding a new piece is going to impact the overall integrity of the machine. Because this was before Leonie Fibic entered the Liberty starting lineup in the playoffs. The Minnesota Lynx had the best starting lineup in the league. Now they are bringing that entire starting lineup back. They just need to do some work around the edges, but I do think that they're going to have to be specific, and it might get a little tricky for them because there are certain players that I don't think are going to work. Like, in my opinion, the Maisha Hines-Allen experiment didn't really work for them. She didn't space the floor in the way that they need their players to, and she just wasn't quite as fast as they played. Ceci Zandalicini is also gone as well. She's a Golden State Valkyrie, so they're going to have to recoup their front court. I think Janelle Salon overseas could be a really interesting target for them. I think she kind of plays their style. I think it'd be a place that would be comfortable for an international player to go to, based on play style and also some of the personnel that they've had there before. So I think that could be really interesting. I'm curious to see if Natisha Heidemann will be back. Also, I think an interesting team for Mercedes Russell as well.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Because she gives them size. And that was a struggle against the Liberty in the finals for sure. Speaking of the New York Liberty, it is my turn with the defending champs here. So I expect that the Liberty are going to swing for the fences. That's what they do. They will be targeting Satou Sabally and Gabby Williams. But I don't think they'll get either just because of how many mouths they have to feed and because of the asking prices for both Dallas and Seattle will be too high. I think Maureen Johannes returns and takes Courtney Vandersloot's spot in the rotation. And I think New York will bring back Kennedy Burke and obviously re-signs Brianna Stewart.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward there, you know? I mean, they're the champs. They're stacked. They have potential to get more stacked. I agree with you, though, that they probably will not end up getting Satou because I think the price is probably going to be too high. And you might want to actually keep those picks because they'll be cost controlled for a team that is going to get more and more expensive as well as the years go on.
Mm-hmm. Phoenix.
So interesting team, right? Because I think you look at them on paper and you just think that they should have been so much better than they were. And when they were healthy, their starting lineup actually had a net rating of a 7.0. So it wasn't like a lot of it was injuries for them. It was an interesting team in that there were a lot of different points in the season where if everything clicked at the same time, you could have seen them really coming together and being great. But it just didn't really happen for a number of reasons. And I don't know how you feel about this. I want to throw a trade your way, or a concept of a trade. I don't have a full trade, but Naz Hillman, I don't think is going to fit in Carlos Mesco's system in Atlanta, but I think she would be perfect in Phoenix, and she fills their need at the 4 position because they were doing that by committee in a league that is, the 4 position is too important. And I was wondering, maybe a Celeste Taylor being part of that deal because I think Celeste Taylor fits really well into what Carlos Mesco was trying to do with her defense and her ability to create turnovers and play fast.
Ooh, that's really interesting. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving with Seattle. And Seattle is very complicated because obviously Annie Costabile, the Chicago Sun-Times, reported that Jewell Loyd has requested a trade. And as we said earlier, they have courted Gabby Williams. And Gabby Williams specifically asked them before she signed with them after the Olympics last year that she did not want to be courted. So it's really hard to make a prediction here because is Nneka Ogwumike coming back to be with her buddy Skylar Diggins-Smith, who's signed on for 2025? We don't know. Are the Valkyries going to tear her away from Seattle? We don't know. So I think what I will predict here is that while the Storm have a first-class amenities and a nice practice facility, players will have some trouble playing for a coach that was investigated, and that investigation was maybe they get Courtney Vandersloot, who they did want a couple of years ago, because she wants to be in a position where the ball is in her hands a little bit more.
They also cored Gabby Williams, which to me says that, the Stars are probably on their way out as well. It just seems like they're in a very different scenario than the one we envisioned them being in. But I do think that they are one of the more fascinating dominoes in free agency. I think what happens there, and I think this team is going to look pretty different next year.
I think so too. Okay, so we've gone through 12 teams and we still haven't talked about the wild card. So now you all know what it is. It's the Washington Mystics. In alphabetical order, they are our final team to discuss, and they are our wild card. So why is this team so confusing? So I will say first why I think they're so confusing. So I don't really have expectations because there's been close to no messaging that has come out of this new front office. I mean, I heard their first press conference will be the day before contracts can be signed, which is January 31st. Mike Thibault gave this new front office so many tools and assets to work with. So I'm just sort of quite unclear the path that they're going down. Do they sell their assets completely and tank for Juju Watkins? Or do I take what their new head coach, Sydney Johnson, said, which was in their press release announcing his hire? He talked about how supercharged the Mystics were to win another WNBA championship. It was incredibly confusing. So it is very hard for me to have expectations for the Mystics. I don't know what you think about this.
Yeah, look, that feels a little bit delusional to me. This is just a team that, and look, maybe I'm judging them too much based on their past. They did finally make those hires. They were the last of the teams that fired their coaches to hire a new coach. They let the expansion draft pass, and they made this decision 3 weeks ago. So how much time do you really have to prepare for free agency or even set expectations? That's not the coach's fault, by the way. That's an organizational failure that I think the coach is going to have to find a way to swim upstream against. But in general, this is the type of just ownership, organizational behavior in the W that just has to go, because this is a team that has so many promising players that could either be traded somewhere else and you guys could potentially do a rebuild. But you have, you've got players like Steph Dolson that I think could be so valuable to a contender, Ariel Atkins, Brittany Sykes, all of whom who could really do like Shakira Austin, all of whom are kind of just like stuck on this Mystics team. So I think it's just malpractice, to be honest, and it really annoys me. And I think that they should probably, from an organizational perspective, they should probably be trying to trade as many of those players as they can. It's just position yourself for that and then just be better. Just be better, please.
Well, thank you all for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day and your first listen today. I want to give a huge thank you to Seerat. Seerat, where can people find your great work?
You can listen to the Ringer WNBA show. We started it in September. Jackie has been one of our guests. She did a great episode with us during the playoffs on the Liberty and Brianna Stewart and Jonquel Jones. I really enjoy and the Liberty overall as a team, their trajectory and how they built their culture. I really loved having you on for that episode. And we're trying to have fun, and I'm definitely newer to this space, but I really have appreciated how welcoming everybody has been, and it's just been a lot of fun, and I hope that that's reflected on the podcast so far. And yeah, I'm psyched for free agency, and I'm psyched for the 2025 season.
Well, this has been Jackie Powell and
Seerat Sohi.
And we are signing off. Have a great weekend and enjoy Unrivaled.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.